What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Living Matt channel, where I talk to you all about how I'm living the American dream. So today I want to talk to you about buying a new home or your first home in 2022. I say 2022 because things change according to market, economy, and all sorts of other things. So I want to talk to you specifically about 2022, but some of these things are going to apply in general regardless of when you're buying. So first, I'm going to give you 3 things that you should consider before you even think about buying your first home. The first one is, are you willing to house hack? If you don't know what house hacking is, I'm going to link some videos up here about how I've house hacked in the back, and I cannot overstate just how much of an impact house hacking had for me. I'll give you a quick rundown, but you can watch the videos that I'll link above if you want to learn a little bit more. But house hacking is basically you either renting out a room in your house, maybe your basement, an extra room to a traveling nurse, Airbnb, or if you have a duplex or a triplex, you live in one unit, rent out the other unit, and it helps supplement your income so you can pay your mortgage. Depending on how much you make, you can live for free or maybe cover 50% of your mortgage or something like that, so it makes it a lot easier to afford that mortgage. So that's the first thing to consider. If you're willing to house hack, you can vastly improve your situation for the long term. The second thing is, if this is your first home, now this is going to apply to everybody, but if this is your first home, understand that this is not your forever home. The average American spends no more than 7 years in a house. And this is not just for the first home, this is for a purchase, a home purchase in general. Most Americans do not spend more than 7 years in a house. So if this is your first one, odds are you're going to want to get another house later on. Most people want to upgrade. Maybe they have kids, want to have more space. Maybe the kids move out. Now they want to have less space. Whatever the case may be, most people are not going to keep the house forever. So if this is not your forever home, then start thinking about, okay, what are the things that I need to look for now that are going to set me up for success in the future? So I'm going to give you a couple things. First of all, you should look for the worst home in the best neighborhood. What do I mean by that? Don't look for a mansion in the neighborhood that is depreciating, meaning that the value of the homes are going down, or maybe there's a lot of crime, or the schools are not that good, because these are things that are not going to help your home appreciate in the long term. And if this is your first home, I want you to start thinking about, how is this home going to help me in the future? Not just, this is going to be a place for me to live, a place to start a family, or a place for me and my partner to start our forever together. Not just that, yes, those things matter, but I also want you to start thinking about long-term wealth appreciation, long-term wealth building. So you want to buy a cheap or the worst home in the best neighborhood, because that's the home that's going to give you the highest chance, the highest likelihood of helping build your wealth. Now, the other thing is, are you willing to take on a fixer-upper? Now, it doesn't have to be something extravagant where you're going to tear down walls or replace the garage, or do all these big home renovation projects. It can be simple things. Maybe there's wallpaper you don't like, tear that down, paint some walls. Maybe just paint the cabinets or change out the cabinets if it's not too much work. Rip off old carpet and put on new carpet. Better yet, rip off old carpet, put in laminate flooring, which is a big thing nowadays. Maybe you add an island to the kitchen. Maybe you change out the appliances. Maybe you change the windows to dual pane windows. Little things like that are things that you can do in a matter of a couple of years. You don't have to do it all right away unless you have the finances for it. But you don't have to do it all right away. But not only are they going to help make your home a little bit better, but again, in the long term, they're going to increase the value of your home. If you're already buying the best house in the neighborhood, more than likely it's already going to have all those updates. It's already going to be a renovated house with all the things that you could dream of. But you're not going to get as much value out of that versus you buying it as a fixer-upper, potentially doing some of the work yourself so you can save a little bit more money there as well. So with those things, you need to think about long-term appreciation, right? If you buy a fixer-upper, not only are you going to add value to it through the upgrades that you do, but it's going to appreciate over time even more, because if you're spending $1,000 on something today to fix something today, in the future that might be worth $3,000. Let's say, for example, cabinets. Maybe you replace 1 or 2 cabinets that cost you $1,000. 10 years from now, that same change could be $3,000. So you're saving in the long term. Now, when I say saving, really it's keeping up with inflation, but that inflation is helping build your wealth over time. Other things to look at or to consider when you're looking at these houses is you may say, okay, well, I've got the right neighborhood, I've got the right house, but you've only looked at it once. You need to go and look at these neighborhoods, look at these houses, different times of day, different times of the month. If you've got time, now I'm making this video about buying a house in 2022, so, it depends on your timeline. But if you've got some time, if you're thinking about, I'm not going to buy a house this year, maybe a year, 2 years from now, go check out those neighborhoods at different times of the year. Because there may be things that matter to you. I know last time I lived in San Diego, something that we noticed while we were there is that there were some neighborhoods that went big for the holidays. I mean, entire blocks of houses decorated for the holidays. Maybe you're really into that and you want to be in the neighborhood where you can decorate a lot. Or maybe you think, this could be a hassle having people roam through my streets at all hours of the night for 5-6 weeks out of the year, every single Christmas. Maybe there's too much traffic going through my street. I can't even park in my driveway because there's all these random people coming through here. So you need to do some research and learn about these things, or you might not find out till you move in, and by that point it's too late. If you're somebody who's not going and you can you don't mind talking to strangers, talk to the neighbors. Ask them, what's it like living in this neighborhood? What do you like? What don't you like? What things do you wish you knew before you moved in? These are all things to consider before you even think about buying your first home. All right, so that was 3 things that are general rules, principles that you can use when you're going to buy your first home anywhere, anytime. Now, what I want to give you is 4, mixing up my fingers, 4 a little bit more specific things to consider today in 2022. So the first thing is interest rates are going up, all right? Just on Wednesday of this week, interest rates already went up. Fed is raising the interest rates. They're talking about raising them a few more times over the next 18 months in order to help keep inflation down or to bring inflation back down. This is important to consider because if you're in the market for a home, the longer you wait, the more expensive it's going to get. Now, home values are already going up. Last year nationwide, some places saw as high as 20-25% appreciation, which is insane. So that's one factor, but with interest rates going up, homes are going to get more expensive. Even if the value or price of the home is not any higher, the fact that your interest rate is higher means your monthly mortgage is going to be even higher. So that's something you need to consider. So as you're shopping around for a home, don't just shop for how much is this house going to cost. Shop for interest rates. Talk to different banks. Some banks may offer you 4.7% on a 30-year fixed mortgage. Always get a fixed mortgage. For some people, variable mortgages are okay. For the majority of us, 99% of us, a fixed mortgage is ideal. I recommend the 30-year because I'm thinking about long-term appreciation, keeping properties as rentals, so on and so forth. But do some research, get a fixed rate mortgage, and shop around for those rates. Some banks may give you 4.7%, another one might give you 4.5, 4.3. You might think, well, what's 0.2 percentage points? Not a big deal. But when you add it up over 30 years, it's thousands of dollars that you're going to be paying to these banks, all because you didn't shop around at the beginning. Some of them are going to charge you origination costs. They're going to charge you points for trying to reduce your interest rates. It may be worth to pay those points up front if you've got the money, but again, shop around. Maybe one bank will say, hey, we'll reduce your interest rate by 0.25% if you just pay $1,000. Might be worth it if you have the $1,000 up front. Again, do the math, work it out over 30 years and see if it makes sense, but shop around to different banks. Don't just settle for 1, 2, or 3 different quotes. I would say look at least 10 banks before you even know. The other thing is, what kind of loan do you want? You can get a USDA loan if you're getting a house in a rural area. You can get a VA loan if you're like in the military or a government employee. You can get an FHA loan, Federal Housing Administration loan, which is great because it helps you pay a lower interest rate. Also, if you don't have great credit score, makes it a little bit easier to apply and qualify. Or you can get a conventional loan. Now, me personally, I recommend if you're able to, if you have the down payment, good enough credit score, so on and so forth, get a conventional loan. It's going to have the least cost up front, FHA loan, VA loans, they come with some added fees, origination fees, that are going to add to what you end up paying over the long term. So conventional loans don't come with that, but they generally are a little bit more strict on who they qualify for a loan. So you may need a slightly higher upfront down payment. FHA may require 3.5%. Conventional loan may require 5% if you've got really good credit, maybe 10% average credit. If your credit is not that great, they're going to require 20% down payment. Depending on what market you're in, that can be a lot of money. But look at all these different types of loans and figure out which one's the one that's going to fit my situation the best. Because again, with interest rates going up, home values have skyrocketed in the last 12 to 15 months. These are all things that are important that you need to take into consideration. Understand that when you make a mortgage payment, it includes 4 things: PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. So when you think about what is my monthly payment, yes, some people pay it separately, but most of us who put it all into one payment that we make to the bank need to understand that it includes those 4 things: principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. So look at what are the taxes for the neighborhoods that I'm looking at. You may think this neighborhood and this neighborhood, this house is $200,000, exact same house over here is $210,000. I'm going to go with the one that's 200. But maybe that neighborhood with the house is 200, the taxes are higher because it just so happened that it crossed the boundary, or now it's in the next city over, or the next town over, and taxes change. So look at the taxes and understand that's part of your overall payment. And just like I said, shop around for rates, shop around for insurance. You want to make sure you have enough insurance to cover your home, but you shouldn't have to pay through the roof to protect your home. So shop around for different companies, make sure you get good insurance at a reasonable cost. Now, I mentioned that rates are going up. Because rates are going up, it's going to be harder and harder for some people on the margins to be able to afford a home. So what are those people going to have to do? They're going to have to rent. So here's the thing you need to consider with that. With more people having to rent over the next couple of years, probably, rents are probably going to go up. Now, I can't tell the future. I can't tell you with any 100% certainty that rents are going to go up. But a lot of experts that know these things are of the mindset that rents are going to go up over the next few years. Right now, there's about a 4 million home shortage nationwide. 4 million homes that we need, that we don't currently have. And it's going to take about 8 to 10 years to build those. So there's going to be a lot of people needing homes. So with interest rates going up, the companies and homeowners that have houses for rent are going to be able to drive up the price of these rentals. So although you might think, well, with interest rates going up, maybe I can't buy a house, you also need to consider that if you don't buy a house, your rent is potentially going to be going up and up and up over the next few years. Whereas if you buy a house at today's rates, yes, they're going up, but they're still relatively low compared to history. You're going to lock in those rates. So say you buy a house at $200,000 today. With average interest rates, you'll be paying around $1,200, $1,300 a month. This is $1,200, $1,300 a month that you'll pay on this house for the next 30 years. All right. Now, the changes are going to be your taxes and your insurance. Those will go up over time, but the principal and the interest will stay set. So you'll be paying around $1,200, $1,300 a month for the next 30 years. 30 years from now, when inflation has gone up, you're making more money, so on and so forth, that $1,200, $1,300 a month is not going to feel as significant as it feels today. On the other hand, if you keep renting for the next 30 years, your rent is going to keep going up every single year. So that's the other thing to consider. All right, next thing. This is market dependent, but closing costs are a big factor. It's going to be anywhere from 3 to 6% of the loan that you're trying to get. So if you're getting a $200,000 house, it can be anywhere from 3 to 6% of 200 grand. So you're talking $6,000 to $12,000 to close on this house. Now, what comes into the closing costs? It's the appraisal, inspection. Some states require you to have an attorney, so you got to have that attorney. Title, you got to do some research on the title to make sure it's clean and that it can actually be transferred over to your name. Inspection, never, ever, ever buy a house without an inspection. Doesn't matter if it's a house for you or rental property, whatever the case may be, always get an inspection done. Check the foundation, check the roof, check the gutters, check the walls, check the electrical, check the pipes, check everything and everything that you can. Termites in some areas are a big thing. If you live in an area like California with earthquakes, is it safe for earthquakes? Does it meet state code? If you live in the Midwest, where I'm at right now, does it meet state code for hurricanes? You need to inspect all of these things to make sure that you're buying a sound home that is going to be safe for you. But so all of these things go into closing costs. Now, depending on the market, sometimes you can negotiate with the seller, and the seller pays some of the closing costs, buyer pays some of the closing costs. In today's market, 2022, it's a hot market. There's less homes for sale than there are buyers, which is one of the reasons home prices are going up. But because of that, if you're a buyer, you need to understand that more than likely, you're going to be the one paying the closing costs. Now, if the seller is desperate, they may be willing to pay a little bit. So definitely don't throw that out. Talk to your agent. See if it's something you can negotiate with the cost of the property. But understand that in this market, if that's one of your holdups, that you need the buyer to help pay for closing costs, that may be a challenge. So be prepared to pay for those up front. Right now, when you're considering how much should I buy, don't think about how much can I afford. Think about how much should I spend. Now, this is another thing that's going to be market dependent. Here in the Midwest, houses are going from $80,000 to $100,000 for a low tier to mid tier kind of home. So I would say, potentially 10 to 15% of your income, monthly income, should be your mortgage. And when I'm saying mortgage, again, PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Now, this summer, I'm moving to San Diego, California. Very expensive market. If you're in a market like California, New York, Chicago, some of these rarely expensive states or cities, then I would say probably 25, 30%. If you start going over 30% of your monthly income, this is where you can be house poor. House poor meaning you're spending so much on your house that you can't afford the rest of your life. You're struggling to buy food, you're struggling to pay bills, your car breaks down and you can't fix it because you don't have an emergency fund. Your child needs something for school or doctor, whatever, and it's difficult to do. You can't save, you can't put money away for retirement because everything is going toward this home. You do not want to be house poor. You want to make sure that your home is nice enough, safe enough for you and your family, but you don't want it to feel like something that's choking you, that's keeping you down. You can't progress to the next level of life. You can't build wealth, generational wealth. You can't save for retirement. You can't save for your children's college because all of your money is going toward your house. So I would say, again, 10% in a cheap market, maybe St. Louis, Missouri, some other areas in the Midwest, 30% at most if you're in an expensive market like California, New York, Chicago. And the last thing I'm going to tell you is, and a lot of people don't realize this, when you own a home, you are responsible for that home. Now, I know this sounds like common sense, right? Obviously, it's your house. You take care of it. But a lot of us underestimate just what that means. Hey, water heater breaks. You're the one who's got to pay for it. You're talking $8,000. Roof issues. Maybe it's paid by insurance depending on what it is. If it's hail, maybe it's not. And you got to replace the roof. That can be, depending on the size of the house, $10,000. You got furnace issues. You got leaks in the kitchen. You've got something stuck in the pipes. Anything that breaks from small to big, it's going to be on you to take care of. So yes, I know it sounds like common sense. Taking care of your house is on you. But do not forget it. Don't take it for granted. Don't overestimate just how expensive it can be to maintain a house. All right, so these are just a couple things that I talked about. Honestly, I could make this a 20-hour video because there's just so many things to consider when buying a new home. But if I could leave you with just one thing that will help save you from disaster, do not make yourself house poor. Do not buy a house that is too expensive for your income, that is so broken that you're going to be pouring thousands and thousands of dollars into it as you try to move into it or live in it. Buy a house that's well within your means, in a good neighborhood that's going to appreciate. So if later on you decide, hey, this house isn't big enough for me, or I want to upgrade, or whatever the case may be, or this doesn't have what I wanted it to provide for me, then you can sell it, you can keep it as a rental, you can recover from buying the wrong home if it's not too expensive. But if you buy a $1 million home and you're only making $50,000 a year, it's going to be hard to recover from that. So the one thing that I ask you all to please remember is don't make yourself house poor. Alright guys, hopefully you got something out of this. I know buying your first home can be overwhelming. I still remember 20 years ago now, actually 2002, bought my first home, and it was overwhelming then, and even now I've bought many properties since then, and it still feels like an ordeal every single time. So hopefully you got something out of these tips. If you did, hit like, so hopefully the YouTube algorithm pushes it out to others. If you want to see more, subscribe so you can see the next video. Otherwise, see you in the next one. Deuces.